This is Rocky Snyder. At the tone, leave your name and message and I'll get back to you.
Every time I get up in front of the class, my legs shake, my hands sweat, and my stomach begins to hurt. I always end up making a fool of myself. Maybe you just need to be better prepared, Charlie Brown.
Welcome back for another episode of the Rockfit Files. I'm Rocky Snyder, and this season we're kicking it off with a unique book, and the title is The Successful Body. Now, I was honored enough to be asked to contribute a chapter to The Successful Body alongside 32 other leaders in the world in health, fitness, mindfulness, and in this case, public speaking, because my first guest, his name is Vince Stevenson, and he is known as the UK's leading speech coach. And also his nickname is the Fear Doctor, because he helps perhaps overcome fear of those that want to really do better with public speaking. So Vince, welcome on the Rockfit Files.
Thank you so much, Rocky. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Well, it's very nice to meet, I would say, a fellow author and a contributing author to the Successful Body. And by the way, if you're in the listening audience right now, what I'd like you to do before we even kick things off here is go to Instagram. And if you would be so kind as to follow me, Rocky_Snyder, that's SNYDER, Rocky Snyder, Rocky_Snyder on Instagram. And you follow me this week while this airs. And at the end of the week, I will choose one of those names and send you a complimentary copy of The Successful Body. So Vince, tell us how you got to be the Fear Doctor.
Okay, well, it's a long process, but let me just tell you about the name first of all. So in England, probably about 10 years ago, there was this crazy marketing thing where people took on, they're more or less marketing handles. So there was a Mr. Motivator. He was a guy who worked in the gym. And, he did exercise. He showed people how to do exercises on TV. So that was Mr. Motivator. There was also a woman called Super Granny. And her job was to show mothers how to be a great mother and, look after babies and children and, that kind of support. And I thought, because my name is Vincent Stevenson, which is quite a mouthful for some people, even Vincent for some people is too much to remember. So I came up with the idea of the Fear Doctor. Now, very interestingly, if you type in the Fear Doctor, you'll find me. You'll just find me, and that's great. And you can click on the link and you'll find Vince Stevenson. But if you try to remember Vince Stevenson, you'll forget. But the Fear Doctor sticks with people. It's because it's it's a marketing handle, and it seems to work.
Brilliant. What kind of moniker would you give me right off the top of your head right now?
Oh my gosh! Right. So you work in the gym, and
Yes.
you're an expert in movement. The motion master, something like that, maybe.
Ooh, okay.
How about that?
The Motion Master. I like that. I think I might do something with it. But how did you become the Fear Doctor? And I love it. I love the fact that you actually, I won't say own the name, but own it well enough where if somebody did a search, they'd find you.
Oh yeah. Right. Well, I had a terrible baptism into public speaking. My first professional speech in front of the board of the Cooperative Wholesale Society in Manchester in about 1984-85 was a complete disaster. So I went in there full of bravado, and it was a complete capitulation, profuse sweating, clammy hands, increased heartbeat, nausea, and I felt like I was going to faint. In fact, I should have fainted. I should have thrown myself on the floor and thrown myself at their mercy, but I didn't even have the balls, the courage to do that. So they sat me down, they gave me a glass of water, they got some brown envelopes and wafted them to give me some air. And I sort of disappeared out of the room 5 minutes later, not to return for 3 months. They invited me back, but they had sent me on a course. And I'm a very resilient person. I'm a very determined person as well. And I realized that, if I wanted to get on in management and leadership, I just knew that I had to conquer public speaking. So this is back in the mid 80s. So in those days, this is pre-internet. Finding help was particularly difficult. But somebody gave me a book. I read the book, and in the back of the book, there was just a little pointer at the end that said, if you have any requirements in public speaking, ring the publisher. So the publisher's telephone number was in the back of the book, and they put me in touch with a gentleman who gave me some assistance. So that was a beginning, and they let me back in 3 months later. I think I mentioned it. It wasn't great, but it was a big improvement on the first one. And then I just was so determined. I just kept trying and trying and looking for opportunities to speak, so that it became one of the. It's just like getting up in the morning. You go and speak to people. So I was working in IT. I had to chair a lot of meetings. I had to do a lot of briefings, that kind of material. And I just got myself into this mindset where, how can I improve? What do I need to do to improve? How can I plan my improvement? And how can I roll it out consistently? So that was that was the trajectory from there on. Some years later, maybe about 10 years later, I applied for a job in a training department because I didn't like my boss. That was the only reason I applied for the job, by the way. And amazingly, a week later, I was working in the training department, but I didn't have any training experience or anything like that. I'd mostly not mastered, but I was comfortable with public speaking at that point.
And
And
being an educator to train other employees in a specific field
yeah,
or technique.
well, it was all IT stuff. So now I was so desperate to get away from my boss. I took on this role, and the role was awful. By the way, the whole project was a disaster, and lots of people who volunteered for the job, this sort of training job, they disappeared back to their user departments quite quickly. But I was so determined not to go back. I actually offered. The project manager went off sick, never returned. And I said, are you looking for somebody to take this project over? Because I'll take it, because I was so desperate not to go back and work with that guy. And they gave it me. They gave me a significant increase in salary for taking the poison chalice on. But as I say, I had my own motivations for not wanting to go back. So, but very, very quickly, I started recognizing how we could improve the process, how we could do things, how we could change the structure so that things would work a lot better. I started creating not blog posts, but facts, as it were. But then HTML came in, then websites came in. So I created an intranet page, and again I was in discussion with my colleagues on the project, and I took control of the project and started documenting all of our discussions and documenting the procedures and processes. And very, very quickly, we were getting great feedback. So this project would last about 2.5 years. We were rolling out some software for a huge organization in London. And yeah, I did 2.5 years of that. And the nice thing for me was that I remember walking down the corridor, and people who'd been on the course, it was only like a 1-hour session, but it was like, so it's an introduction to some very important software. And people who would normally just walk past me in the corridor were asking me, how's the project going? And they were saying that they'd enjoyed the training. And I found that, I'd never had that kind of feedback before. And I really felt valued. And I thought, hey, maybe this is for me. And when that project ended, I had the opportunity of going back to another user department, not the same one, but I just felt that, you know what? I need to get in front of people. I want to get in front of people. I feel like I've got some really useful speaking skills, some training skills. I think in IT, most people are really interested in how do things work. But what I realized in that 2.5 years on that project was how you have to adapt psychologically, how your approach has to adapt psychologically to get people on side, to make them feel good about themselves, to make people feel good about their learning. Some people, I'm not the sharpest tool in the box. I don't always get things first time. And, you really need to be patient with people, just like with children, really. Don't take that the wrong way. But, when if you got children, Rocky?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so when you're showing them something, they're not always going to get it first time, and you just need to be really patient and just keep reminding them, and reminding them. Now,
They're much
when
like
we're
their father
working,
that way. Yeah, they're
yeah,
much like their
well,
father.
I'm not very bright. There are some things I just cannot. It's not that I can't turn my mind to that. I'm just not motivated to, like accountancy. Oh, that just kills me, you know. But very interesting. One of the things that we might talk about later is I'm running a podcast now, interviewing authors, and a few weeks before I started that project, I'd never done a podcast before. I didn't know what products were out there, what software was out there. I didn't really know how to structure one. But within about I just gave myself 3 days to do a huge amount of research, and a week later I was inviting authors. I had 0 followers. I created a new Twitter account called Boomers on Books, and didn't have any followers. And I'm inviting people to come onto this show with no followers. And amazingly, I managed to persuade some crazy people to come on and be interviewed. And again, you're using psychological things there. You know. I was asking these guys, do you remember when you started off and how difficult it is? And that's kind of where I'm at. And they said, oh, we'll give you a hand. And it was great. The people being incredibly generous with their time. They've been very, very frank as well. They've talked about their successes. They've talked about their failures. And they talk about the joy of writing, and listening to them. I find it incredibly inspiring.
Yeah,
And I'm learning a huge amount as well.
I find that it is not as difficult getting guests as you would imagine if you're just new to podcasting, because a lot of people out there want to share their experience and knowledge with others. And when it comes to public speaking, this is typically not a live kind of conversation. It's just between two people that happens to be recorded. So you can allay a lot of that fear. And, going to that public speaking story you told initially here in our conversation, I think everybody probably has a story that they struggled with initially trying to speak in front of a crowd. And in my case, several years back, I was asked to step in and substitute for a radio host on a show that he was hosting called Divorced Fathers Network. And what was happening then is that he was going out of town, and he so told me, I've got these guests lined up. One's going to call a few minutes into the hour, and the other one's going to call at the bottom of the hour. And here's the topic. Even though you're not familiar with divorce in any way, you're happily married with some young kids and all that, just you can always talk about fitness if you want to. Well, the show came up, and I'm sitting in the radio booth, which is intimidating enough with the headphones and the microphone right up to your face, and the soundboard. You have to know how to negotiate. And there's no caller, and the producer of the show was trying really to, as hard as she could, to find this person that was supposed to be my guest. Crickets. It was like that dream where you wake up and you think you woke up, but you're in the hallway of your high school, only clad in underwear, walking through, and then the bell rings and out comes the students. It was something like that. Well, of course, I had to improvise and just continue. The show must go on, so to speak. Come the bottom of the hour, the other guest did not call in. I had to basically wing it for an entire hour on live radio. Boy, if that doesn't send little shivers down your back and anxiety
Yeah,
and fear, I don't know.
that's yep, that is a baptism of
It
fire. Yeah.
was in my own cold sweat. I've got to tell you that. So that is, I've seen studies or surveys when it comes to the greatest fear in most people's lives, and public speaking is up the top 3 almost every time. What's
Mhm.
that all about, Vince?
Um, in a nutshell, it's about an attack on the person's ego. We all, again, I can give you some good stories. So,
Yeah.
uh, young men, young women, they go to university, they get great grades, they get their degrees, they're accepted and acknowledged for being incredibly intelligent and bright, and then suddenly somebody asks them to make a presentation, and suddenly all of that approbation that they've had in the past, it looks like they're putting it on the line. It looks like they've, now this isn't true, of course, but it looks to them like they're going to be in front of people. People are going to ask them questions, or they might ask them questions, and they're going to be found out.
Uh-huh.
That's that's what's going on. So this thought that they could screw up in public, and the public, let's call it, I don't like the word humiliation, because it's not that. It's just that, you know, it's a, if you look at it as a performance thing, then it's like anything. If you go to the gym and you don't know what the exercises are, you're not going to perform very well. Something that we don't do very well in this country is prepare people for the world of work. These days, I think even Warren Buffett said many, many years ago that public speaking is one of the top skills required in any. It doesn't matter what your field is or what your specialism is, but if you don't communicate well, the chances of you progressing are limited, highly limited. So the more fluent you can become, the more ready you are, the more prepared you are for communication, the greater the opportunities will arise. I think that what's happened for me, the moment I started getting comfortable with public speaking, the moment I started, you know what they say about looking for volunteers. A volunteer is worth 1,000 pressed men. So rather like that project that I took on, when you volunteer to take on, dirty work, and you've got some skills, and you feel like you've got half a chance of doing a really good job, then you can create a really good reputation for yourself as a good communicator. And I think that, and it's these are transferable skills. So when you go for job interviews, having it, having a good CV, being able to speak well, being able to convince people that you're the real deal in that interview situation, not just talking a good game, but actually, I'm talking about having the skills to back it up as well, and the confidence to back it up as well. So I think that communication, public speaking is one of those things that's here to stay. I think that the internet has given just about every company, no matter how big or small, an opportunity for the owners or key players within those organizations to get online, to talk about their products, to talk about their services, to talk about their companies, and to really present themselves to the internet world. And I think it's a great thing. The world has changed phenomenally in my 62 years. I know I look much younger, but
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
unbelievably young. But it has, the world has changed so much, and we have there are a lot of technophobes out there, but I think for the rest of us, the internet is probably, without the internet, I wonder what most of us would be doing these days,
That's
not
an
just in terms
interesting
of
point.
work.
Well, sorry, I was just saying that is really an interesting point because this is the age of information. Any handheld device can present you with as much knowledge as you're willing to absorb or able to absorb. So it's not for lack of information. So
Mhm.
what is it in today's world that someone seeking to improve their ability to speak in front of a group and improve their public speaking skills, what is it that they need aside from all the information they can glean from Google?
I think the most important thing, and this isn't just for public speaking, and I'm sure you'll agree with me in the context of your work, but if you're trying to work with somebody who's got a bad attitude, it's very difficult. If you want to achieve something, if you're determined if you're prepared to put the hours in, if you want it that badly, you're going to make it happen. And, you know, I run these courses. I've been running courses at the College of Public Speaking for 14 years. And we've seen a huge increase in numbers. Maybe that's due to marketing. Maybe those people were always out there, but again, at various stages of their careers. And, you know, we probably handle 1,000 students a year.
Wow.
So, you know, that's pretty good. That's a lot of courses. That's a lot of classroom time. We have a lot of fun. I always try and make learning fun. I think Walt Disney said, if you can entertain and teach simultaneously and let people enjoy that learning opportunity. So that's my style. We like to have fun. We'd like to keep it light. We're not judgmental. You know, everybody who walks through that door is very courageous in my book. They're going to be talking to people like themselves, and they're going to be putting their cards on the table about their demons. And although I don't ask people to talk about their demons publicly, in a lot of the group exercises, they will discuss those demons with their colleagues in class. And what we see is that when we group those demons together, there are certain categories, and that those people who often feel like they're on their own and it only applies to them, they actually see that they're not alone, that it is a common, you know, there are commonalities between people, and that there's no magic number, there's no maximum number on the number of excellent speakers that we can have. You can, you know, through practice and by practicing the real things, and again, coming back to your profession, working, you know, in the gym, if people don't do the exercises properly, you're going to screw up and you could seriously injure yourself. And it's the same with public speaking. If you know, we've got this awful saying, practice makes perfect. But, you know, what if you're practicing the wrong thing?
Mm-hmm.
What if you're injuring yourself? What if you're creating more damage for yourself than you need be? So we show people how it works, why it works, not just how it works, but why it works. And we look at the psychological and the philosophical end of that as well. And we try and turn their situations into everyday situations that they can relate to, and then that they can apply in front of their, you know, typical colleagues.
Are there certain elements that are common when you speak of practicing poorly? Like, are there certain things that you would want to discourage somebody from having in their repertoire for speaking in front of a group?
Well, there are certain body language situations, you know, scratching, sniffing, playing with your hair, playing with your clothes, hands in pockets. That doesn't look good for men, especially in tight pants. You know, there's lots of things in and around body language. You see, the interesting thing about your body language is your people will believe more in your body language than what you actually say. Because, and then we have a great saying, it's not what you say, it's the way that you say it. Now, if I said to my wife, so if my wife said to me, "Do you love me, darling?" And I said, you know, I walked over to the window away from her and kind of looked out the window and paused for 30 seconds and responded with, "Yeah, of course I love you." I think she'd be pretty overwhelmed with that, don't you? But interestingly, if I sit her down on the sofa, if I sit next to her, if I take her by the hand, if I look her in the eyes and touch her cheek, and I tell her, "Gosh, I love you. I've always loved you." What do you think would get the better reception?
Oh,
Yeah,
there's an obvious answer
yeah.
there, of course.
I love you. I mean, it's the same words. It's the same three words. I love you. But it's not what you say, it's the way that you say it. And, you know, politicians know this, salesmen know this, everybody should know it, but most people don't. And that's why a lot of people who are very bright, very qualified, have great experience, knowledge, and professionalism, they don't interview very well. And your body language says a huge amount about what you're thinking and what you're feeling. and you've got to send, your body language needs to send the right message to the right audience.
So that's perhaps on the poor side, scratching, preening, primping, and pulling on your clothing. But positive aspects of body language, are we talking just being upright,
Yeah,
tall,
I,
and relaxed?
I think standing up straight is good. Again, and there are good physiological reasons for that. You know, you've got a muscle here round about solar plexus height. You've got your diaphragm, which is the lower end of the lung. So when we stand up straight, gravity, and when we breathe in deeply, the diaphragm expands and it comes down. And as we speak and speak and speak on that breath, the diaphragm contracts back to its default position around about the solar plexus. So by standing up straight, you're going to have greater vocal dynamism. Your voice will be richer. It'll be stronger. You'll sound more confident. You know, if I spoke to you, you know, how would you feel if I conducted myself? You know, you probably think, oh, Vince is going to fall asleep any moment. Let's wrap this up now. Yeah. So seriously, our body language says a huge amount about what we're thinking, what we're feeling, and of course, the energy in our voice when we're talking is very important as well. Now, when you combine these elements together, I think that you can create something. You can create a presentation, you can create a message that people would want to listen to. And it's just practicing those things, those key things that work. And the more you practice the things that work, the more consistent you become.
I could see a very beneficial activity being something where not quite pantomiming, but where you're trying to get your message across through body language without any verbal cues or message whatsoever. Is that something that you've played around with?
There's lots of ways of exploring public speaking. You know, you can do improvisation. One of the things, when I moved to London many years ago, I didn't know a soul. About half a mile away from where I live, there's like it's an amateur dramatic theatre, and it's like a 50-seat theatre. It's very small, and on Friday nights they used to have you know, theatre workshop nights. So you would be on stage, and they would give you exercise. Everybody would do something with their voice, and it was mostly quite comedic as well. It was funny, and we would act. You know, we'd all stand around with our papers, reading Shakespeare and doing this and that, but you know, mostly having a lot of fun. For me, I went along to meet people because I didn't know anybody locally. I thought it'd be nice to have some friends in the neighborhood, and it was very useful for that. But standing up on that stage and talking to people and doing vocal exercises, and that's something that I've always enjoyed, by the way, and something that I've been teaching for many years, vocal exercises. It's a great way of spending an afternoon. You can have a lot of fun, and you can develop your voice and your confidence and your rhythm. And those are good things that you can do when you're speaking.
Now, going back to the time before internet, and you explored your first public speaking class or workshop, I imagine there is or are one, two, or three items that you still hold true as an initial lesson in public speaking. Is that an accurate statement? And if so, what are those things that you've held on to all these years?
It's a, I just feel that the public speaking is a huge subjective jigsaw. There are two aspects to it. There's the physiological aspect. You know, there's the body language. There's the, you know, the posture. There's the, you know, the use of your hands and gestures and movement. You know, and there's nothing wrong with movement and walking, so long as it's appropriate and not distracting. There are things that you can do that always work. And again, it's, I think the skill is doing the right thing at the right time most of the time. I mean, again, it's quite subjective, but if you're doing the right thing at the right time most of the time, I can guarantee that you're doing pretty damn good. You know, you're doing a good job. You're doing, and that's what we want. We want to be consistent. Now, the other major issue that I should have mentioned earlier, and it's probably there's one word that has kept a very good roof over my head for many, many years, and the word is perfect. There are a lot of perfectionists out there, and that makes life awkward for themselves, because what are the subjective criteria for perfection in public speaking? Now, whatever if you were to try and answer that, Rocky, and you can get anybody to try and answer that, I'll just disagree with you, and I can disagree with you because because it's a subjective issue, and it's like sport. Who's the best basketball team? Who's the best soccer team? Who's the best? Who's the best at this? Who's the best at that? Now, when you're playing a game like golf, objectively, the guy who goes around, or the woman who goes around with the least strokes, is the winner.
Totally.
And the nice thing about the Olympics is, you look at the Olympic mottos, higher, faster, those kind of things. The guy the man or the woman who hits the tape first is the winner. The guy or woman who jumps the highest is the winner. Now, if you ever go to a speech contest, if ever, somebody should invite you to be a judge at a speech contest, because this is really funny, because you'll get like a score sheet, and you will mark people on body language, posture, facial expression, the message, the delivery. There's lots of different entities that make up the message or the delivery of the message. And what you'll find is, let's say you have 5 judges, you probably have 5 different winners. Yeah, because you'll all have the same objective criteria, but you will all apply them subjectively.
Certainly.
And then what happens is you all not start arguing, but you will have disagreements amongst the judges about who won. And it's exactly the same with politics. Why don't we all agree that that we like this president or that president? Why don't we all agree that we like this painting or that painting? Economics, again, it's another subjective discipline. Whenever you bring subjectivity, advertising, marketing, do you market your gym?
Yes.
Of course, yeah. Right. So, the old adage about marketing, 50% of what our marketing works and 50% doesn't. We just don't know which 50% it is, and it's a subjective challenge. Bless you. It's a subjective challenge. And the most important thing about public speaking is to get up there and to speak to people. Look, by the way, eye contact, looking people in the eye. Now, if I start looking away, you're going to start thinking something very important or more interesting is happening over there, rather than, even through a screen. So you'll be thinking, oh, Vince is distracted. This isn't going very well. But just looking towards the camera now, you're thinking, we're connected, we're engaged, and this is good. So again, eye contact is a huge aspect of public speaking. And again, if I kind of burn my eyes into yours, that's a little bit too much, and you'd feel very uncomfortable with that. But similarly, if you're talking to a group, let's say you've got 10 people in the group, because that makes the percentages easy. Ideally, you'd like to give that person 10%, that person 10%. You'd like to give everybody 10%. If you just keep looking at the same person all the time, they could get the wrong impression and everybody else could feel excluded. So you've got to feel socially confident to actually look people in the eyes. And it's a bit like, when you're a rookie dater, if you've not been on a date before, or you're not familiar. So, for example, I found dating very, very difficult when I was a young man, simply because I grew up with 3 brothers. I went to an all-male school and I played soccer all my life. I was just surrounded by men everywhere and very few young women. So, the dating game was a huge shock for me. But again, there's only one way you can improve, and that's by going out and doing it. Getting the experience of going on the dates. And that's how it works. And if you're smart, and I think most people are pretty smart, you learn from your mistakes, and you try and improve the process. And that's what most what disappoints me sometimes with some people that I know is that they get to a certain plateau, they get to a point where they feel really comfortable, and if they pushed on, they could be incredibly exceptional, but they don't. They hit their comfort zone and they think job done. But if they just pushed it a bit extra, and you probably see that in the gym as well,
Yes.
those guys who, they kind of achieved their goal and they're pretty happy with that, and then they'll go to the bar, for 6 weeks to celebrate,
Well, we see it,
and
when people just are living within their comfort zone,
yeah.
and it becomes uncomfortable over a period of time because nothing's changing. And so they come to see us, and we need to make them uncomfortable in certain ways so
Yeah.
that we can expand their comfort zone. And what do you know? Their world opens up. You also are coaching or teaching politicians, world leaders, non government organizations, those NGOs. And I imagine that, like myself, you have a certain assessment protocol, but when it comes to public speaking, like the different elements of a judge might be scoring upon, like you told us earlier, is that how you work with somebody at that level, or anybody in particular, whether it's your classes or politicians? How do you assess what needs to be worked upon?
Okay. Well, the first thing that I do is I look at the individual. Yep. And I observe them. We give them exercises to do. So we'll get two people like you and I. Let's say we met on one of my courses, and we would do an exercise where we would have to exchange information and then disseminate that information about the other person. So I would introduce you, and I'd tell everybody your name, where you were born, where you live now, what type of work you do, and marital status and children and that kind of thing. And that's going to take like a minute and a half. But the actual collation of the information might take 2 or 3 minutes, or maybe 5 minutes. It depends. So people get up and we video them, and I'll give them some feedback on what are they doing with their posture, what are they doing with their eye contact, what are they doing with their hands. So there's lots of things. So I'm looking for things that are working, and whatever's working, I don't like tick boxes, but I'll talk about what's working, and I'll also give them some feedback on areas that they could improve on. Okay, so maybe a bit more eye contact over here, maybe a bit more volume in the voice, maybe you're not speaking very loud, and people are struggling to listen. So you listen to the individual, then you give them feedback, but you give them feedback in a very non-judgmental way. Okay, so the word criticism actually means pro and con, but most people, because we have a negativity bias, we
Mhm.
tend to focus on all the negative stuff. So I don't like the word criticism. I like the word feedback. I think feedback is really, really good. So I give them the positives, then I give them the the areas for improvement, and then I try and wrap it up and round it off on a positive note. Okay, so I'm not trying to make anybody feel like I'm shooting them down. That doesn't help anybody. So I always want to be incredibly supportive of what they're trying to do. As I was saying earlier, these guys are my students. I want the best for them. I want them to get great outcomes down the line. But the other thing I ask everybody is, once they walk into the classroom, whatever you know or whatever you think you know about public speaking, abandon it. What I
Really?
want to do, yeah. So what I want to do effectively is a deconstruction. So just forget about everything you know and everything you think you know, and I'm gonna build you up from the foundation so that we're all on the same level. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yes.
Okay. So that way, it seems to work. It works very, very well. People people, as they do more exercises, as they get more stage time, as they, deliver more messages, their confidence improves. That we start working, what I think, I was saying about this affront on the ego. It's very difficult to be yourself. It's very difficult for the real you to come through when you feel like you're being judged.
Yes.
Yeah. So what we try to do, we want people to bring out their knowledge, their experience, their professionalism. We want them to bring their education. We want them to bring all of their personality, their humor, their charm, all the good aspects of their personality. I ask them, I invite them to bring it into the classroom and to bring it into their speech making. Okay. So that they're just talking instead of there are a couple of words that really freak people out. One is speech and the other is presentation. But if you turn those speeches and presentations into conversations, just like you and I are having a conversation now, and we're having conversations all day, every day, by the way, and those conversations aren't scripted. There are no, they're just completely dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
So I ask people to bring all of their skills into the classroom, to talk conversationally the way they would, like you and I are having a conversation now, and forget about speeches and presentations, and just share the best of your knowledge, your skills, your experience, and your professionalism. And just remember that everybody in the classroom is in the same boat. We're all here to help each other. We're all here to support each other, accept each other. And that's another thing as well, by the way. I think I found myself, I mentioned dating was very difficult initially. And I think that if you struggle to accept yourself, it's very difficult to accept someone else.
Uh-huh.
And I think that was the big learning thing for me as a young man, is that I needed a little bit more self-love. I mean, there was a lot of bravado out there. I used to be a very, though I say it myself, I was a good soccer player, and that made me a lot of friends, and it gave me a lot of opportunities, and everybody knew I was a good footballer, and gave me special treatment for that. Even my dad gave me special treatment for that. He was very proud of me, and that opened a lot of doors. But on the outside, there was a lot of bravado, a lot of young men's bravado. But on the inside, I was very unsure of myself. Not about football. I was pretty sure about football. I knew I could do that. I knew what the requirements were. I worked very hard at it. And very interestingly, I think football for me was a great escape, but it also teaches you how to win, and it teaches you how to lose. And it teaches you how to be a good sportsman, and how to show respect for your colleagues and your competitors, and I think how to be a better person. And when you can bring those into your professional skills, when you can bring that into the office or the gym, or whatever professional environment you work in, if you can be a good person, even if you're not the best speaker, people can still see all the positives in you.
Well, you just mentioned so many things that I could spend another hour unpacking here, but just taking on a couple of them right now. One thing you asked all of your students is to talk about themselves, which means that they are the only expert of themselves for the most part. And
Mhm.
that's wonderful because you tap into one of their strengths of knowledge and experience just by having them share themselves. And the other part being that all the elements and experiences that I have gone through in my life, you can attribute value to, such as this was good and that was bad. But in the end, it all is what brought me to this point in time. And so I can look back with regrets if That's how I want to look at that. Or I can just appreciate every event for what it was. And that was a stepping stone, a learning moment, a victory. We could label it that way too. But nonetheless, everything brought me here. So once I can accept my foibles and my successes equally, then am I able to express myself in ways that I might not have otherwise. That's what you're
Yeah,
saying, right?
I think a lot of people put a lot of pressure on themselves, as I said, to be perfect. I think women particularly are very hard on themselves, especially mothers, they they their children are crying, or they've not got this, or they've not got the right shoes, or you know they're never happy, even though they're doing a great job. Do you know what I mean? My neighbor upstairs, very nice woman. She's got two great young boys. But I was talking to her a couple of years ago, and she was very sad. She's saying that one of her sons is a little bit, his behaviour's a bit unusual, and she blames herself. And but the kid's a lovely kid. He's just a little boy. He runs around like a little boy, and he gets in trouble and falls over and makes mistakes like we all did. And I said, he's like, just to me, he's a great kid. He's just like a normal kid. But she's beating herself up over the kid because he's not perfect. But she's not perfect either, and she's upset about that. But this is the whole damn thing about perfection, because what are the subjective criteria for it? You're chasing the impossible dream. You're never going to get there, and if you're of the nature of beating yourself up, you're going to give yourself a lot of opportunities to do so.
I love how you fold that into public speaking because it isn't just about skills, but it's your own interpersonal relationship. Now, I do have another question, and it concerns the background. For those in the listening audience, Vincent Stevenson, my guest here, has been talking with a backdrop of what looks like the planet Earth, but at night, with lights lit up on the planet's surface in the dark of space, with almost a corona of light that encircles the planet's outline. So, can you tell me a little bit about your choice and backgrounds?
Certainly. So I wrote my book, The Fear Doctor, about 7 years ago. I only had it published last year because, well, because of COVID, and I was furloughed, and I had some time and I found the right person who could help me get it published. So that was a real breakthrough. But I chose the book cover many years ago, and the book cover has a picture of it looks like a moonscape, not the Earth like this, but there's a moonscape. And I read this book by a famous advertiser, as an English advertiser. This guy was saying that lots of companies every year spend millions and millions of pounds on really smart, subtle advertising campaigns, and don't get any return on them whatsoever. And they're overthinking things. They're trying to make things too clever. And this guy says, all you've really got to do is be different. Yeah, do something different. So I read that book, and a couple of days later, I was looking on, is it Shutterstock? Something like Shutterstock. I was looking for something, and I saw this moonscape, and it looked brilliant. But it had the stars in the background, and I just thought, wow, that is a great image. And then I connected the two ideas, and that was, I was going to stand in front of this moonscape in my suit and invite. Then I have a videographer, a guy that works with us, and I was going to make this introductory speech, with the green screen thing,
Oh yeah.
and I'm going to make the introductory speech to the course, and at the end, I'll be standing there in front of this moonscape, and I'm going to invite people to come to my course, and you're going to make an out of this world speech. So the idea was, they were wondering, what's the moonscape thing? all along. And then right in the last 5 seconds, I invite them, if you're looking to make, it's a bit cheesy, but it's different. It's a bit
Memorable.
cheesy. But if you want to make an out of this world speech, give us a ring and we'll make it happen for you.
That's well, cheesiness goes a long way.
Oh, I like cheese. I like cheese.
Yes, it sells millions and
Mm.
billions a year. Well, Vincent, I can't believe this has been an entire hour spent
I
just
know it's gone
chatting
very
away.
quickly.
I love it. You have a good conversation when time is no matter, and it just flies by. So
Yeah.
thank you so much. And now you are the leading author here in The Successful Body, as in chapter 1 is yours, all about public speaking. What a wonderful way to kick it off. And tell me, for those in the listening audience that want to explore public speaking and a little bit of advice from yourself, The Fear Doctor, how can they get a copy of that book?
Okay. Well, you just type The Fear Doctor or Vince Stevenson. As if you can remember Vincent Stevenson, Vince or Vincent Stevenson, and it's on Amazon. It's Amazon.co.uk and .com, and it's not very expensive. It's only about $7 or $8, something like that. So it's not expensive. But I think I've got about 30 reviews, 29 of them 5-star. So yeah, I'm very happy for it's only been out there for 9 months or so. Because of COVID and because we've not been able to be in class, we've not been able to sell as many books as I would have liked. But that's just the way it is. And I wrote the book, originally as a compliment for people who'd attended my courses.
Uh-huh.
So I think that once we get back to the classroom, I'm sure the book sales will improve dramatically.
Well, I wish you well with that for sure. And I want to
Thank
thank
you
you
very
for
much.
taking some time and coming on with me. I love having guests on because I walk away with more information and insight. So thank you for providing that today. And that's it for another episode of the Rockfit Files. Thank you, Vince Stevenson, Fear Doctor, for coming on the show and sharing some insight. Now, if you want a copy of The Fear Doctor, just check the descriptions below this podcast and you'll find out how you can order yours. Don't forget also to follow us on Instagram, Rocky_Snyder, SNYDER, and you can be eligible to win a copy of The Successful Body. I want to thank you for listening. Make sure that you subscribe if you haven't already and share the word. Get out there and tell people all about it. We'll see you next week.